welcome to the special edition of Notice Tonight on COVID and mental health. The deadly second wave of COVID in India has sparked off a fear-epidemic. People are afraid of dying, people are afraid of losing their jobs, and all sorts of anxieties, adding a whole new dimension to the issue of mental health. To discuss the subject, I'm joined tonight by an eminent panel of medical experts. Joining me from Gurugram is Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra, a senior consultant at the Mental Health Institute of Neurosciences at Medanta, the Medicity, one of India's best-known psychiatrists. In Guwahati, I have got two very well-known psychiatrists joining me on the show tonight, Dr. Jayanta Das and Dr. Sangeeta Dutta. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special edition of Notice Tonight on COVID and mental health. Let me go straight to you, Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra in Gurugram, Senior Consultant, Institute of Neurosciences, Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences at Medanta, the Medicity. Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra, first of all, welcome to the show. The issue is, in the second wave, in 1 month's time between April 25th and May 25th, 114,000 people have died due to COVID. And it took 7 months during the first wave for the same number of people to meet with their end. That is the same time, 7 months, 114 lakhs in the death in the first wave. And in the second wave, it took just 1 month for this number of deaths. Now, this has only increased the stress level and anxiety of people. How serious is the issue? What do you think?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. Yes, you are absolutely right. There is a serious issue of anxiety and mental health disorders. It was actually there ever since the time COVID started. And as mental health professionals, we know that we are saying that along with the pandemic of COVID-19, there is a pandemic of mental health and psychological disorders which runs alongside. Probably even much more cases as compared to COVID. Even last year, there were estimates that up to 50 to 70% of the population may find itself in high states of stress. And this is across countries in the world. And there is a lot of anxiety which was setting in. The anxiety was related to the uncertainty, the fear of acquiring COVID, the fact that no definite treatments were in place, and of course, the manner in which our lifestyles changed. We were confined to our homes. There was a lockdown. We had to maintain physical and social distancing. There was uncertainty related to jobs. So anxiety, psychological disorders, a host of symptoms related to psychological disorders has increased exponentially from the first to the second wave. And it wouldn't be wrong to say that practically everybody as of now is probably having some or the other psychological distress at this particular point of time.
Now, Dr. Mehrotra, I'm coming to you, Dr. Jayanta Das and Dr. Sangeeta Dutta in a moment. Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra, now to what level can this lead to? What are some of the signs of people in serious distress? What are some of the symptoms? How can we know that the person is under severe stress because, of course, of COVID-19?
So there are a host of symptoms which we see in people who are in states of high stress. People report disturbances in sleep, which is seen quite often, inability to get proper sleep, lack of refreshing sleep. There may be problems or disturbances in appetite. People generally report that they are very anxious or restless. They are constantly on the edge. They are always overthinking. The mind doesn't seem to stop. And they will tell you that even when they are sleeping, the mind continues to be awake. Then anger may be a symptom of people who are in states of high stress. So people may become irritable, people may become angry, or they may also start becoming sad. They may lose interest in things around them. So sadness sets in. In extreme cases, people may become or start feeling very helpless, and they may start feeling very hopeless. Apart from this, there are a lot of symptoms of stress which are physical symptoms. So people may manifest with headaches, people may manifest with a lot of fatigue, they may manifest with body aches, they may manifest with stomach related problems, a lot of acidity, gas, burning, bloating, symptoms like these. They may start having palpitations or an increase in heart rate when they are extremely anxious. Some report difficulty in breathing or a sense of suffocation. And then there are problems related to attention, concentration, focus, and productivity decreases. And it's very important for us to understand that there are the psychological consequences, the consequences on productivity, but also the consequences on overall health. So physical health also gets compromised if we are in a high state of stress. And during this period of COVID, we are talking about a lot of immunity, and that immunity is important for battling COVID. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, stress is a huge dampener as far as immunity levels are concerned. So it's very important to understand this stress, it's where it's coming from, the symptoms of stress, and what is it that we can do about dealing with this stress much better.
Right. I'll come back. I'll come to you in a moment, Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra. Let me turn to you, Dr. Jayanta Das. Dr. Jayanta Das, we have heard Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra saying some of the symptoms, and yes, the new normal arising out of COVID has really impact on everybody's mental health. Now, how do we beat this stress? How do we beat this? How can we deal with this stress? What are some of your suggestions?
Say, Wasbir, good evening, and good evening, Dr. Saurabh. I could not hear anything, whatever Dr. Saurabh has narrated
Good evening.
in your query. So that's why probably I won't be able to, correlate whatever he has spoken just now. I can only tell that, see, this uncertainty of the illness itself, the novelty of the illness itself, and the treatment procedures is still evolving. The scientists are working very hard. They have come up with a lot of research about this particular virus and treatment modalities. But treatment modalities are changing because of these uncertainties, and especially in the last second wave which is running on, the fear of death. What I have observed is much more amongst the community, because whatever you have spoken in the beginning of this program, that what was the death rate in the first 7 months, the death rate has completed within 1 month. 1 month. So from that perspective, people are very anxious,
Right.
very jittery, a lot of stresses are there, and then uncertainty is much more. And at the same time, it has been compounded by the news that third wave is coming, and this third wave is going to affect the younger generation, the young children much more. So considering all this, two things are happening. One, the
Right.
pandemic situation itself is causing a lot of stresses, anxiety, depressions among the mind of the people, young children, especially those in a little higher classes like class 9, 10, 11, and college students, because they are aware of the every situation. So compounding all this, I see, compared to
Right.
last time, that this time the impact is much more so for the mental health is concerned. Now, I would only advise the people and community in general that, in spite of the fact that this is a problem which has got a lot of uncertainties and it is ever evolving, the treatment procedures is there, I would still appeal and ask the people that do not lose hope and optimism, because science is, in the past we have a lot of history that history could overcome,
Right.
the science could overcome all the pandemics during the last 2000 years. If we go the history of 2000 years of history of pandemics, we have seen that people suffered, the humankind suffered, but in spite of this lot of sufferings, people could overcome it at some point of time. And now we are in
Right.
a more advantageous and a
Absolutely.
better position,
Absolutely.
to overcome this pandemic. You can see
Right.
it took almost more than 200 years to find
Uh,
out the vaccine for the smallpox. The history suggests that. Now, the scientists and the effort of the hardworking community in a collective way, they could find out a vaccine in less than a
right.
year. So this is a
Yes.
very
I
optimistic
will.
scenario. So,
Absolutely. 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 I'll hold your thoughts. Hold your thoughts, Dr. Jayanta Das. I'll come back to you. Let me turn to you, Dr. Sangeeta Dutta. Dr. Sangeeta Dutta, do you think people across the board across age groups are having to bear the impact of stress, or do you think it is impacting more on older people, or for that matter on children? What do you think? Is it impacting people across the age group, or there are certain age groups which are more affected? Okay, I don't have that line to Dr. Sangeeta Dutta. I think it's too delayed. Let me take that question to Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra. Dr. Mehrotra, same question to you. Is it impacting people across the age group, or do you think it is impacting older people more or children more?
Well, it's actually impacting every age group, and the nature of the stress and the reasons for the stress may differ across age groups. But right from young children to teenagers, where there is a complete change of their lifestyle, to people who are working and may have issues. COVID is of course the common thing, but may have other issues related to work, job, as well as elderly people who have been recognized as the vulnerable group, people who are more likely to have comorbidities. So, across age groups, everyone is affected by this stress. And of course, genders as well. Men and women are both equally affected as far as this stress is concerned.
Right. You see, Dr. Jayanta Das was making this point. Let me ask you a specific question, Dr. Mehrotra. What is the difference between dealing with a fear of a visible enemy and an invisible enemy? Do you think COVID is, of course, an invisible enemy? And do you think, therefore, the impact on individual's mental health is much more multiplied? Do you think that has a multiplication effect?
Yes, absolutely. It does. It does make a difference, and I think one of the things is that in case of an invisible enemy, the planning seems to become very difficult because you really don't know what to expect. And as far as an enemy is known, we can think better and we can plan better. So the fear is accordingly much more. And we would see that as we have come to know about the nature of the virus, we are able to plan better and strategize better in how to deal with the virus and how to prevent ourselves from acquiring the virus. But as we saw in the past 1.5 to 2 months with the second wave, that our information was limited and it just completely took us, off guard, and of course the consequences. So it becomes much harder if we really don't know what to expect as time goes ahead.
Dr. Saurabh, I'd just like to add,
Right.
Wasbir,
Right.
if I'm permitted. I'm permitted, if I'm permitted, of course.
Yes, please go ahead.
No, my point is that
Yes, go ahead.
per se, it is not that this virus is not visible. This is definitely visible for the scientists or the research workers. Only it is not visible those who are directly affected at the community level. But it is again, the problem is again, compounded by another information. Like for example, first wave, it was only felt that it transmits through the droplet. The infection transmits in the community through the droplets. But this time, there is another second point which has been again,
Right.
Percolating in the society, that it is also, airborne contamination. I mean, airborne infection is there. So both this has confused people, and that from that perspective, because it is invisible, people are more guarded, more anxious, and more, they are in panic this time, of course. Yes,
Right.
Wasbi.
Now, one more thing, Dr. Jayanta Das, do you think this fear and anxiety is leading people to an increased use of things like alcohol, substances like alcohol, tobacco, etc.? Do you think it is leading to an increased consumption of these items?
In any stress situation, those who are vulnerable, already those who are vulnerable, their intake of those who are already indulging in substance abuse, their intake of substance increases. That is a normal phenomena in a normal situation. So when stress increases for any individual, certainly in this particular situation, people would like Certain people, I won't say that all people, certain people would like to definitely indulge on more substance abuse, that it might increase the increment, the quantity might increase among certain population. But I won't say that, I can't say that it is across the age group it is, or across the society this is a very visible phenomena. Certain people, yes, those who are already vulnerable, this will increase. Saurabh can highlight from his
Right.
perspective and his experience.
Right. I will go to Dr. Sangeeta Dutta, but very quickly to Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra. Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra, a lot of people, a lot of our viewers wants to know, how stressful is constant watching of news stories on television or mobile devices? Like, people have nothing to do. People are at home, indoors. They are constantly using the mobile devices, either playing games or watching TV or watching news of the news. When you talk about news, it's the same depressing story of COVID and its impact on people. Dr. Mehrotra.
Yeah. So absolutely, very, very important. And we need to understand that this probably is the third pandemic, the pandemic of information, which we may refer to as the infodemic. And a lot of this information is things which are worrying, things which is, very, very negative. And when we feed our mind with information which is negative, and we constantly feed our mind with the same information, negative information, we are either on social media or on television channels listening to news related to the pandemic, the mortality, the cases, then we are bound to feel more anxious, we are bound to feel or have more psychological stress. And there is something which is now called doomsday scrolling. This is a word which came up last year, which essentially
Yeah.
means a sort of a compulsive behavior where people reportedly read about negative news despite knowing the consequences that it has. So we compulsively read about or find out about negative news, and people call it doom scrolling or doomsday scrolling. So this negative news is having a serious impact on our psychological health. It's making us more stressed and it's making us more anxious. And we talk about reducing the consumption of news in order to reduce our stress. There is another thing which is happening, which is that increased consumption of social media. Our screen times have increased significantly. And this is a huge problem in the younger age group, teenagers and young adults. And we know that we can get addicted to the internet as well. So that's another problem which is coming up. People getting addicted to games, people getting addicted to other forms of social media, and that also is a huge problem.
Right. Okay. Now, let me turn to you, Dr. Sangeeta Datta. Dr. Sangeeta Datta, I have a very simple question. Now, we have, unfortunately, we missed you in the first part of the discussion, but the question is, we have discussed about, the symptoms of stress, how to detect stress and so on. A lot of people would want to know, how do one beat stress? Is it exercise? Is it music? Is it taking healthy food? What is it according to you? How does one beat stress in these very, very difficult times?
Well, the first thing that I would like to say is to beat stress, you have to remember that try to control things that are within your control. Let's say there are things that we can do during the pandemic, but there are things which are beyond our control. Only when people try to worry too much or think too much about the uncontrollable, that the stress level goes very, very high. For example, certain things which are within our control are following the COVID protocol, wearing a mask properly, washing your hands, and maintaining social distance. But
Yeah.
if we maybe watch news or we get information, because my previous panelist has talked about an infodemic, he has talked about internet addiction, he has talked about game addiction. So if we resort to such things, what will happen is we are worrying about things that we cannot control. That way our stress levels will go very high. Apart from that, in this new normal, we have to understand a few things. We'll have to have a daily routine where we sleep on time and wake up on time, and at least sleep for 7 to 8 hours every day. Second is wake up every day and have, indulge in some kind of physical exercise. You may not be able to go to the gym, you may not be able to go out, But please try and do some exercise every day, because exercise will release endorphins. It will actually keep your mental health better and also raise your immunity. Third thing is you should take nutritious food. Nutritious food means a very balanced diet. Sometimes because of anxiety, people are taking a lot of vitamin C or citrus fruits and ignoring other aspects of food like protein or carbohydrates, etc. But I think taking a balanced diet suffices. A lot of people ask whether taking a multivitamin every day is necessary. It is not necessary if you're taking a balanced diet, but if you take a supplement, it's not harmful, it can be beneficial. Apart from that, thinking positive is very important.
Right.
Listening to music, keeping your thoughts positive. If you have negative thoughts in your mind, trying to control your negative thoughts by keeping yourself busy with in other activities. Pursuing your hobbies, which could be maybe reading positive material, which could be watching good movies, which could be singing, which could be playing an instrument, etc. So you can actually pursue your hobbies now. And apart from that, I think we have to learn to look at the silver lining of the cloud. Because when we look at the cloud, everything looks very dark. But we know every cloud has a silver lining. And the silver lining is that COVID pandemic has given us the time which we always wanted to do things that we love to do and to spend time with our family. Now it's high time that we invest more time, quality time, in our families, in our homes, with our family members. Spend time with children, spend time with your spouses, and invest in the relationships which we could never do before because of paucity of time and because of our busy schedule.
Right. Okay.
And something which cannot break you will make you stronger. So stay hopeful that this pandemic is going to make you stronger. And of course, dedication.
Now, I'll come back to you, Sangeeta. I'll come back to you, Dr. Sangeeta Dutta. I'll come back to you. I'm coming back to you also, Dr. Jayanta Das, but let me once again go to Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra. Dr. Mehrotra, Dr. Sangeeta Dutta is saying that this staying home, this COVID has given us an opportunity to spend quality time with our family members at home. But there is a counter view, there is a counter view. A lot of people are saying there is a section of opinion which says that, staying at home, is leading to conflict. Is leading to conflict among the family members. Are you getting cases like that?
Yes, that's true. That is true. Whereas what Dr. Sangeeta is saying, one would believe and imagine that when we have more time with each other, and we've been wanting to spend time with each other as family, we never seem to have had that time in the past. So one would imagine that with the time spent together, the bonding would increase, and it is likely to make us happier. But we have also realized, and not just here in India, but across the world, that conflicts seem to have increased over a period of time. There are more fights. Unfortunately, there is an increase in domestic violence as well, and which is contrary to what one had hoped for or expected. But I guess what is happening is that there is a lot of stress, there is a lot of frustration which has come along with this pandemic. People's lives are affected, and anger and irritability is one of the manifestations of stress. And on many occasions, it unfortunately comes out in the form of getting into arguments with family members, raking up issues of the past, picking up on little things, and the anger and the frustration is a maladaptive way of letting a stress out. But this could be one of the reasons why the conflicts have increased, because people are generally very frustrated. They are very irritable. They seem quite fed up with the situation. It's already 1.5 years. Of course, their personal lives are impacted, and there's just no outlet. So this is a maladaptive method of dealing or managing the situation.
Dr. Jayanta Das, I'll have to go for a break, but very quickly, Dr. Jayanta Das, what could be the long-term impact of such stress and anxiety?
You see, it has been observed that mental health issue cropped up even after 3 months after post-COVID situations also. There are so many reasons. So it has been observed that mental health issues has increased and escalated, prevalence has gone up even after the 3 months, during the 3 months period. So a lot of people can get affected by this. Now, long term, one has to consult if he cannot comes into terms on his own, an individual. So I think he should take expert advice immediately. Let it not allow it to, continue to suffer from the different type of mental health issues. I know a friend of mine who is outside the state who had COVID last year, who is a doctor. He had a COVID last year, but unfortunately, he has not been able to come up with the mental health issues even now. Even after undergoing treatment. So this might continue for a longer period if it is not mitigated at times or intervention is not given. But yes, of course, as the things going into a positive direction, as the numbers of cases comes down, death rates comes down, and as gradually lives become get back the rhythm itself, then probably many people will be able to come out with all these post-COVID stresses or depression. And what I would also like to add here,
Absolutely,
one point.
absolutely. That
One point I would also like to add, it is not only
yes,
having
please.
spending time with the family members. The conflict is not because of the staying together for a longer period. My feeling is that the whole prevailing situation is very gloomy all over the world, and your environment, your neighborhood, because of the lockdown, after 4 o'clock, after 5 o'clock, things are very different. It creates a gloom. So most of the people even if they are not suffering from COVID
Yes.
directly, some of
Right.
their family members are suffering, some of their friends are suffering, death is there in many families. So a gloom atmosphere makes every
Absolutely.
people, if not
Absolutely.
clinically depressed, they may not be clinically depressed, but
Atmosphere,
underlying unhappiness.
atmosphere of gloom, absolutely. Dr. Jayanta Das, absolutely. Atmosphere of gloom, but at the same time, it is nice to hear the fact that as the numbers come down, there is a glimmer of hope arises in the horizon, and human race is known to adapt from one situation to another, and they quickly enliven their mood. I'll go for a short break. Don't go away, viewers. I'll be right back after this very, very short commercial. Welcome back. Let me go once again to you, Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra. Dr. Mehrotra, according to a 2019 study by the Indian Council of Medical Research, 197.3 million people in India live with mental disorders. Now, does this increase the challenges of those dealing with mental health issues? This is my question to you.
Absolutely. It's a very challenging and it's a very stressful situation. And it is stressful both for the normal population as well as the challenges increase much more for people who may have a pre-existing mental disorder. So the challenge is much higher for these people as well as the caregivers or the family members of such people. And unfortunately, in many cases, we are seeing a flare up of the symptoms for these people because of the lockdown and because of the fear of COVID. They have not been able to get in touch with their doctors regularly. They have, on many occasions, stopped taking their medications. Many are lost to follow up, and the psychological problems have increased, and many of them are having an exacerbation of their symptoms. So those with pre-existing psychological disorders who are already on treatment, and it's a huge number, you would know that, for them the challenges are much more.
Right. Right. Now, coming to you, Dr. Sangeeta Dutta,
Yes.
there is uncertainty. Now it is 14 months since COVID, since we are living with COVID in India, from March last year to May now, beginning of June now. Now the issue is, even after 14 months after COVID has hit India, there is uncertainty. Therefore, people are hoarding medicines, people are trying to hoard oxygen, people are trying to hoard concentrators. So, what does it reflect? What kind of a mental situation does these things reflect?
Well, when people are primarily anxious about the fact that they're not sure as to whether they're going to survive this pandemic. People I have come across tell me that, ma'am, we don't know if we are going to meet again. Even my clients say that because I don't know if I'll die of COVID. And a lot of my clients actually, when I say lot, I would say at least 10 of them have passed away. They've succumbed to COVID. So now people are very anxious. They're just trying to survive. And the anxiety has also made them slightly paranoid. They think that, they have also been seeing footages, and they've also been seeing, news on a regular basis, watching news. So they have seen that there has been scarcity of oxygen, there has been scarcity of hospital beds. So now everybody almost, out of anxiety, out of severe stress, they want to equip themselves with all the facilities which might be necessary if such a situation arises in their own homes or in their own lives. So this is a marker of severe stress, anxiety, sometimes anxiety mixed with depression. Sometimes it can be obsessive, intrusive thinking also. All the time they're getting thoughts, repeated thoughts about COVID, of being infected with COVID, of carrying home, being a carrier and carrying home the virus to their near and dear ones, especially children and people who are aged. So, along with that, I don't know if this was discussed by the other panelists because because of technical problems, I couldn't hear what was being discussed in the beginning of the show. Actually, all kinds of psychological disorders have increased, including substance abuse, post-traumatic stress disorder, psychosis, etc. So now people in a high level of stress, they're not being able to think logically. Sometimes they're trying to control the uncontrollable. They're constantly worried about the fear of getting infected with COVID. In fact, this is an existential anxiety because people are thinking about surviving and living on. Because most people these days think that if you're infected with COVID, you will have to get admitted in the hospital if there is a hospital bed. Sometimes there can be scarcity of facilities, and so they are hoarding oxygen and medicines. And even if you get into a hospital, the hospital bills are exorbitantly high. A lot of people who have actually gone through this have told me this. And
Yeah.
there is no guarantee that once you are released, some of them die in the process of being treated. Some of them, while they're treated with steroids, their immunity falls. And there was this black fungus and mucormycosis, which also came up in between. And people who are discharged from the hospital during the second wave, a significant section is dying because of post-COVID complications. Because people back home were happy. Okay, we have spent a lot of money, but we have got our family member back. But there's no guarantee. And if people have died during treatment, during COVID, their last journeys have been very tragic
Right.
because they have never had their family or their friends by their side.
Absolutely.
So everything has made the situation so stressful and
Absolutely.
traumatic.
No.
People are trying to resort to methods so that they can
Yes.
survive.
Yes. True. Dr. Jayantadas, also added to what is what we have witnessed, the fear of death in the absence of friends and family members. There are a lot of fear among people that, okay, I might die. There may be no family member beside me when I die. My friends and family, nobody may be by my side when I die. Do you think that is also adding to the anxiety level of people who are suffering from COVID or who are watching the situation closely?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a very extraordinary situation. Unlike many pandemics, this pandemic has created a situation where a person who is suffering, he cannot get the touch and the affection of the family members. They family members cannot go nearby. This is a very extraordinary and very unfortunate situation. Of course, this has created a kind of a fear, a kind of a panic amongst the many people who are, even if they are not suffering. This is one issue which is cropping their minds, and it is definitely creating a lot of panic among many people, no doubt about it. This is a very extraordinary situation, and it is the very
Right.
characteristics of this particular pandemic that we are suffering.
Absolutely. True. True. Dr. Mehrotra, we have seen how the government is dealing with COVID. We have seen extraordinary measures being adopted by the government. They're going all out to deal with the COVID situation and somehow bring things to under control. Now, my question is, while doing this, do you think enough importance is given to mental health issue? Because at the end of the day, we do not want a population, suppose we have been able to take control of COVID at some point in time, but we have got a huge population of people who are afflicted because of mental disorder. We don't want that kind of a situation either. So what is your prescription? What do you think needs to be done?
So even before COVID, importance given to mental health or psychological disorders was limited, and the same happens during the time of COVID. As I already mentioned, the number of people who may be suffering from anxiety and stress and psychological disorders far outnumbers the number of people who may have landed up with COVID for now. And that number will always be higher, the ones with psychological disorders. So a lot more needs to be done as far as the psychological health of people is concerned. And COVID is very unique. You just mentioned that if somebody lands up with COVID, already even without COVID, we are in lockdown, we are restricted to our house. But then if one has COVID, you go in isolation. If you get admitted, you are all by yourself in the hospital. And then, of course, you have to deal with illnesses in your family members, the fear of illnesses in the family members, and grief and bereavement, which we have seen a lot during the second wave. So psychological disorders and mental health problems needs to be addressed much more than it's being done right now. But what I'd like to say is that it's not as if nothing has happened. Most of the state governments, as well as the central government, has started a free helpline for people who may want to call up, who may find themselves in states of anxiety, and they may want to talk to a mental health professional. So organizations, individuals, and the government itself are aware of the fact that there are such problems existing, and in their own way, they have started these initiatives of online counseling for anybody who may require so, free of cost. The Indian Psychiatric Society also has come up with such helplines. So there is some mechanism in place, and people need to be more aware of this wherever they are staying in their state. I'm sure these services are being offered, and they need to get in touch with these professionals who can help them. Having said that, communication is extremely, extremely important. During this period of isolation, when we are, locked up in our homes, the first thing which individuals should do is communication, and meaningful communication. You need to talk, you need to ventilate, you need to, let your stress out. And that itself gives you a sense of relief. So communicate with your friends, talk to your family members, make a phone call, make that video call, and talk about, anything which is worrying you. And when you do so, you let out some emotions, you feel relieved, but you also simultaneously get reassurance, you get support, and you may get some, if you are in a problem, you may get some ways and means and techniques to solve the problem. So we are saying that communication is very, very important. We need to talk to our family, we need to talk to our friends, and this itself helps people feel a bit better.
Right. Now, one more thing, Dr. Mehrotra, a lot of parents would like to know how should they deal with children, because children are not used to being cooped up in a room. Children are usually outdoor kind of people, particularly teenage children. So how should parents deal with children in this difficult time, in this extraordinary situation?
Yes, it's certainly a challenge. It's certainly a challenge both for the children to be able to understand the situation and the need to be at home, as well as for the parents to be able to manage children and teenagers. One, we need to give them a correct view of the situation and the reasons why such restrictions are in place. So that's very important. Based on their age, based on how much they understand, we need to give them some sort of an explanation as to what is happening and what we are expected to do in order to save or, keep ourselves safe from COVID and keep our family members safe. After that, we need to ensure that children have some sort of a structure to the day, which means they do get up at a reasonably early time every morning. They engage in some exercise. Then their classes would begin, and they should be engaged in some activity or the other. Yes, outdoors is not possible, but one must ensure that they are communicating with their friends. So they are talking to their friends. On occasions, they can have a group call. So that helps. And this is actually also an opportunity for the parents to spend more time with their children, quality time with their children, engage in activities with their children, as well as try and inculcate what we refer to as positive addictions, try and broaden their horizons, get them into reading, get them into the creative arts, get them into music, right? Even play games, board games together, some of the things which we used to enjoy doing way back 20, 30 years back. So we've got to engage them in a lot of
Yeah.
meaningful activities which
Yes.
would help them now and even for
Right.
laters.
Right.
And there's a positive side to technology as well. We now have a host of things which are available online.
Yeah.
There are workshops for children, there are virtual museum visits. So all of that should also be encouraged.
Yes. Right. Now, Dr. Jayanta Das, one more query which I have picked up, for my viewers is that, how does one deal with impact of anxiety like difficulty in sleeping? Because sleep disorder, inability to sleep or insomnia, this is becoming a very, very common complaint among people these days. So how should one deal with it?
See, anxiety, depression, stress, everything can cause, insomnia or sleep rhythm problem. Okay. Now, thing is that one has to follow a very disciplined routine at home. While most of the time people are inside the home, they should have a quality time with the family. They must get up from the bed always in time. And Sangeeta must have mentioned about doing exercises, doing certain routine creative activities, involving himself or herself in certain hobbies, and more especially, I would just like to add with the Saurabh that the parents has to be very innovative to spend their time with the children. Lot of activities parents has to evolve on their own. So while spending a quality time and going to the bed in time, not indulging in too much of screen timing, especially after dinner, glued to the TV, all these things can, and also maintaining a very disciplined sleep hygiene, which we can narrate, so that can definitely help every individual to cope up with these stresses. Otherwise, if the sleep problem is it is too high, and she is not unable to handle on his or her own, then they can always take advice from the experts and consult the psychiatrist. I would also like to add one more point, Wasbir. See, it
Right.
is not only the issue anxiety, stress, and depression in this pandemic situation. See, this virus, although it is more commonly known that virus affects the lung, but this is also a problem where the brain can be directly involved because of the viral infection. So we must also keep these things in our mind, and we must not forget that because of the brain involvement directly, because of the disruption of the blood supply to the brain, and also because of the fact that immunological functioning and mental health issues are directly related, so the mental health problems can be much more
Right.
severe, and it can crop up with a higher dimension maybe after a few months a COVID
Right.
patient is
Right.
affected because of
Yes.
the virus itself. So we have two issues. One, because of the pandemic situation and
Right. Now,
environment to deal with the stress, and also because of the virus causing pathophysiological changes, causing a lot of neuropsychiatric symptoms. So also we have to keep these things in mind, and that is why the mental health issue is
absolutely.
a big, big, huge problem going to be in the future. Probably.
Yeah. Right. Dr. Sangeeta Dutta, final comments. Some do's and don'ts. Some common do's and don'ts in this hour of crisis, according to you.
Uh, some common do's and don'ts would be, please stick to the COVID protocol, because that way you are going to keep yourself safe and also keep your family members safe. Second, please continue to think positive, and whatever makes you continue to think positive, you must indulge in everything. Maybe talk to friends who talk positive, avoid toxic situations and people, watch positive films, read positive books, or indulge, pursue your hobbies, which, as I said earlier, you never had the time for, but now you have sufficient time. Now you must invest more
Yeah.
time in things that money cannot buy. And here I am talking specifically about relationships, relationships at home. So it can be with children, it can be with your spouses, it can be with your parents, but spend quality time. And like during the discussion, it has been clarified that some of the, maybe domestic violence or some of the outcomes that we get to see these days in homes, it is not necessarily because of spending increased time. It is rather dysfunctional adaptation to the current situation. So let us learn that we have to actually, instead of surrendering to a situation of learned helplessness, let's unlearn the bad habits and let's relearn certain good habits, like maintaining a daily routine, waking up, sleeping on time, waking up on time, sleeping for at least 7 to 8 hours, exercising every day, meditating every day. Yoga is very helpful, having a balanced diet. And apart from that, I think thinking positive and prayers can help. Sometimes, if you pray every day, if your spiritual quotient is high, it also raises your immunity. And it's a request to everyone who's watching this
Absolutely.
show today, that sometimes mental issues, psychological issues may not be visible. A person could suffer in silence, may not be able to communicate. So it is also our role to increase awareness about mental health issues in general, remove stigma, and enhance empathy. Let us place ourselves in the shoes of people who are suffering. And even if they
Absolutely.
cannot speak out, let's feel, understand, and help.
Right, right. Very, very well said, Dr. Sangeeta Datta. Final word to you. I'm running short of time. Final word to you, Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra. At the end of the day, obviously, we cannot surrender. That is what human nature is all about. We cannot surrender to the COVID pandemic or to the virus. So, what is the silver lining? What, according to you, what are some of the do's and don'ts in your own words? And then we'll wrap up the debate.
Sure. So as far as the don'ts are concerned, one of the most important thing is do not spend too much time on news, particularly news which catastrophizes, news which sensationalizes, that makes us anxious. Simultaneously, the do's would be the bigger list, which I'd like to do. Maintain a structure to your day. Try and get up at the same time every morning. Try and exercise for 30-40 minutes every day. It will work wonders for you. Meditate for some time. We didn't talk much about meditation, but the simplest of meditation helps tremendously. Have meaningful engagement during the day. Engage, find time for your hobbies and interests. Socially connected. Stay socially connected, and even within the confines of your home, talk to people, do WhatsApp calls or do video calls. So social connectedness, very, very important for relaxation and well-being. Meaningful conversations, let your heart out, communicate with people what you want to say. Accept the situation, that's very important. Accept that this has happened, accept that this is going to take time. Do not catastrophize, but try and engage in positive thought processes. This too shall pass. And one very important concept is that we may not be responsible for the situation that we find ourselves in, but the response which we show, or how do we deal with the situation, that can be controlled by us to some extent. And finally, this is the time for all of us to focus on things such as gratitude. Despite being in a state of crisis like this, there has to be gratitude. There has to be kindness both
Yeah.
towards oneself as to and the society at large, and there has to be compassion towards everybody. These important qualities, or these are the do's at this particular point of time, and they would help us tremendously.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, these two shall pass and
Wasbir,
we
just
shall
one word
overcome.
I'd like to
That is
add.
the message at the end of this discussion.
One word I'd like to
Yes,
add,
very
Wasbir,
quickly.
just one sentence.
Please.
do take vaccination, do take vaccine. That is one news I'd like to add. And be optimistic. Science will emerge victorious and we'll get back the rhythm of our life. Do take vaccine, please, and believe in science. Keep faith on science. Thank you.
The, yes, absolutely. Science would triumph. Science would triumph at the end. That is what Dr. Jayanta Das said, and Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra said that this too shall pass. And I'm going to add by saying that we shall overcome. At the end of the dark tunnel, there is always light. I'd like to thank Dr. Saurabh Mehrotra in Gurugram, Dr. Jayanta Das, and Dr. Sangeeta Dutta for their valuable insights into COVID and mental health. I thank also the viewers for watching the show. Good night and goodbye.